Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances, the podcast where we take you down the rabbit hole to the fantastic world of the strange, the paranormal, and the unknown. I'm Morgan Knudsen. Happy holidays. Come along with me on this week's adventure. Well, it is the holidays, and we are here just a few weeks till Christmas, which is always exciting, and no better time to kick into the holidays than to talk about spirits, right? Because let's face it, Christmas is probably one of the most spirit-laden holidays imaginable, maybe even a little bit more than Halloween, dare I say. People don't think about that as a connection to Christmas, but the reality is many of the traditions and the stories and whatnot that we share around the holidays is really connected to spirits and the spiritual world. So we're talking today to a good friend of mine who is a wonderful lady and a lovely medium. Her name is Ann Selene. Many of you guys probably know her as Lady Ann Selene, and she has just republished a memoir called Haunted Inheritance, a memoir of spirits, signs, and second sight. Now, the reason why I really wanted to have her on here in December is because we really want to get into the idea of connection. How do we connect into the spiritual world a little bit more? Well, Anne's the right person to talk to, so let's do it. Well, there's nothing that says holidays like talking about connection, and probably one of the best avenues of connection in the world of parapsychology is, of course, mediumship. So, Anne, I'm really glad to have you. Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
I'm just really glad that we could do this because, I mean, we've talked so many times in the past, and I think this is a season where people start to think about this kind of thing a lot. Like, we don't think about Christmas as something that's, I guess, super paranormal, but right. The reality is it is. I mean, it's really focused around loved ones that have passed away. It's, of course, we've got the Christmas Carol, which was all about spirits. And we've got that really spiritual aspect to it. So for you, what does being a medium mean to you, especially around the holidays?
Gosh, well, first of all, I want to say how much I absolutely adore the Christmas time because, of course, as many people know, how much I love the Victorian era. And back then, they told so many ghost stories. And, it was interesting when I first got into the field, everybody would get really sad when Halloween was over. And then it's been lately, at least what I've seen within the community, I would say over the last maybe 5 years, it's been growing more and more towards, oh, wow, the spooky season is the entire season. It never stops,
Right.
So it's just, when Christmas time happens, in Halloween, yes, there's the thinning of the veil and it has its own energy. But Christmas time, there's this magic that comes along with it, and there's a stillness. And it does feel a lot more ghostly, if you will. I don't know how to explain it other than that, but it feels more ghostly than Halloween does. Halloween feels more mischievous, if you will. And so with Christmas, you have this ghostly, but there's also the monsters. So you have the Yule Cat, you've got Gryla and the Yule Lads, and Krampus, of course, the rock star of the season. Right. And so, it's a time of reflection for me. When I think about the turning of the seasons, and I love winter because it really forces me to go within. There isn't anything else going on. So you don't have the blooming of the flowers, the ripening of the apples, and all those beautiful, colorful things. It is now, barren. And this is what you are faced with. You can only go within, at least in my experience.
I absolutely love that. And I mean, I'm sitting here in Alberta, which is as barren and cold as you can probably get for the most part. I mean, it was minus 30 Celsius here last night. It was,
Wow.
oh yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, it is here. Winter is here.
Nice.
And yeah, you're completely right. Like, and I mean, here, of course, we've got a lot of stories of, like you were saying, just spirits and creatures and things like that. Like, we have, of course, the Wendigo is probably the biggest here for winter. You brought something up that was, I think, really significant to our discussion today, which is the idea of going within and how important that is for mediumship and those who are interested in connecting with their loved ones and whatnot over the holiday season and into the future. That's the one thing, like you're saying, that winter really does, is that there comes a point where you kind of have to just sit, and whether that be through meditation, whether that be through getting out in nature, which we're going to talk about here, and just really, really beginning to interconnect with not only the world around us, but understanding, I think, that we're really projecting the world around us. We are the ones that are really involved in creating it. So for you, when you think about what you do as a medium and where you fall with that, how has that introspection and inner work and being still, how has that really helped you with your mediumship?
Gosh. It's one of those things where this has been quite the journey since I was quite young. I would say that this really started when I was around 15, and I entered what was called the healing group. My dad had taken me to this place. It was this lady's house, and in the basement she had what she called an angel room. And you'd walk into the angel room, and there was a massage table that was in the middle of the the living, it was kind of like a living room. And then you had this group of people, and this group of people, they were so incredible. And each person kind of had this. Okay, I don't know who has seen the Tinkerbell movie. I've got young kids. So it's like, in the beginning where they're sitting there and each fairy has like their thing, the autumn fairy and the winter fairy and the animal one. So everybody has their thing, right? And so the amount of knowledge and education that I was able to have by going every Sunday here was absolutely incredible. And it was here that I really learned that we really do create our realities. And it started off with the fact that if everything is made up of energy, and we are made up of energy and we're magnets, then the energy that we send out, we're naturally going to then bring back. Years later, and I don't know, I'm not so good at reciting quotes, but there was one teacher, and I love what he said. It was something along the lines of, as you focus, so you grow. As you grow, so you become. As you become, so you are.
Oh, I love that.
Which again speaks to the fact that we really do create our reality. And in fact, I'm actually writing a second book, and it's all about manifestation. Because let me tell you, I actually have a crazy story that just happened, and
Do
crazy
tell.
to
We
me.
love crazy stories here.
Well, so right now I am kind of going through a bit of a rebirth and, really getting in touch with my heritage and everything. I actually come from a long line of adoptions on my maternal side. And I've done the ancestry and the genealogy, and I've got like 70%, DNA that's all Celtic. And so and then I was learning about different color palettes and how different colors can really like bring out your eyes or your skin tone or your hair or what have you. But then there's also different meanings behind different colors and the energies that you can, have and or bring to you. Well, while I was doing this, I was also studying the different crystals because I've had a lot of different like necklaces and things. Well, for the longest time, I wore a moonstone. It was a very white rainbow moonstone on a silver chain. And I learned that as a soft autumn, it was too heady. And I am somebody that experiences a lot of anxiety. So then through the research, it was like, no, you need something that's more of a natural chord. And then I'm a Scorpio. So one of Scorpio stones is labradite. And labradite is a very grounding, protective stone. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to try to find that type of a necklace. And I looked and I looked and I really couldn't find one. And I wanted one that had like the macrame, but all of them were black. And it was like, okay, well, and black isn't one of my colors. So I was just like, oh, I'm not sure what to do. So I set that aside and I kind of found one in bronze and I was like, maybe I'll try this one out. Well, sure enough, a couple days later, I get a call from somebody who had gotten me a gift. And they didn't know, we hadn't talked about any of this, none of it at all. And I go to the mailbox and I find this gift, and you wouldn't believe it. It is exactly the necklace that I had been looking for. And this person had no idea, no clue at all that I was even looking for a necklace at all. Nothing.
As much as you say you're not going to believe it, I 100% believe it. I 100% believe it, because that I think is the type of magic that people don't necessarily associate with what we're talking about today. You know,
Right.
when people think of mediumship, they kind of think of like the Hollywood aspect
Yeah.
of, like, oh, you know, you're going to just see dead people and there's going to be, but
Yeah.
really what we're talking about is something that's so much broader. And when you start to tie into yourself and connect into yourself, be present, this is the type of stuff that starts to happen. And there's no like rhyme or reason. Like you say, you never spoke to this person about it. They would have had no idea, but yet somehow this stuff almost gets downloaded into your reality with like really no, I guess what we would call logical explanation. But I mean, this stuff doesn't have to be logical.
Right. No, exactly. And it's so fascinating. And I've often wondered about it, so I've taken another turn, if you will, within my research. And, so I'm somebody that has, ADHD. I'm neurodivergent. I experience the world quite differently.
No,
And
somebody in this field that's neurodivergent.
yeah.
What?
So I ended up, because of different headaches and different things like that, I went and had a CT scan done, and then they wanted me to do an MRI. And the MRI was all fine and everything, but they found like a medium white, white, what's it called? It's like a white matter disease of the cerebellum. So this is just scarring that happens on the cerebellum from like migraines, because I'm a migraine sufferer. But through learning about this, I also learned that there's not a whole lot of studies done in regards to, okay, the shape, the size, the thickness, and the positioning of certain areas of the brain. And what I'm wondering is, depending on how these are shaped and formed and how, because the white matter of the brain is basically like the connectivity, it's how you're wired, how each area of the brain speaks to each other. So depending on all of that, I'm wondering if somehow, if we're all connected to energy, right, if there's this web of whatever that we can't see, if those differences in the brain make it to where you're tuned in to the different wavelengths. So not that things are just in your head or that you have a problem, but maybe your like antenna, right, is connected to a different frequency or radio station that makes it to where you can see and experience more that maybe somebody else can't.
Well, I'll send you down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this, because I have some research that will help you.
Nice. All right,
along,
ready.
Yeah, along this journey. And for listeners, I've brought this up before, and I still highly recommend that people go and read this guy's research. He's a Canadian neuroscientist by the name of Dr. Morris Friedman. And this guy, he's remarkable, and that was his area of study, was mediumship and different types of brain damage. And what was
Oh,
really interesting was that what he was looking at primarily was like brain injuries and things like Alzheimer's, where there was like disruptions within the brain,
right.
and in those specific areas. And what he found was really, really interesting. He essentially started to look at whether or not these disruptions were actually, and this is going to be really non-clinical terms, but disrupting the natural filters that the brain has for this type of experience. So the way he was looking at the brain and what he had kind of hypothesized was that the brain almost has these different filters within it, almost like a camera does, that filters out things like UV, infrared, all those things. So we actually get the image in front of us that we're looking at. And he kind of saw these experiences in that same way, where he was looking at it like, if you take those filters out, then suddenly you're getting this full picture of what's actually there. So if you've got like brain damage, yeah. So if you've got brain damage in a certain area and that filter is busted,
Right.
then is that letting that experience it? So his results were fascinating. And he found that, yeah, there's absolutely a correlation. Basically
Oh,
exactly
wow.
what you're saying. Yeah, that there's this aspect of the brain that once these filters, so to speak, are disrupted,
Hmm.
that these experiences you become more open to them. So like when you're talking about this connective tissue and the migraines and whatnot, that's immediately what pops into mind for me.
Wow, that's incredible. I'll
Yeah.
definitely have to take down his name and get my hands on some of his books or research. I mean, because
So
my next
interesting.
step is I actually asked for all my images, and so the doctor gave me 2,000 of the images from the MRI. So I'm planning on trying to, find, of course, the best ones because 2,000 is a lot to
Yeah.
go through. But I just, it makes me sit there and go, what can you do? What could you find? Especially, for our field, because within our field, I feel like there's so much healing that can be done, that should be done, that isn't being done. And if I can, even put a tiny percentage towards that, that would make me feel like you know, I had a purpose for being in it.
No, I totally get that, and I think it's that intention, that energy that I think is so important when people start exploring mediumship, is how can I use my life to do something that is impactful. And that, for me, what I've noticed is that every single person in the field of parapsychology and otherwise, but in the field of parapsychology specifically, that has had and set forth with that intention, things begin to open up. Like we talk about this idea of this universal connection and so on and so forth.
Right.
Things begin to open up. The universe is conscious, and I really think that it reads that.
Right.
And you talk a lot about this in your, well, the retitling of your old book,
Right.
but the book that we want to talk about in regards to this, which is Haunted Inheritance: A Memoir of Spirits, Signs, and Second Sight. And this is such a great book for anybody who is looking to connect with somebody that has been on this journey, because you detail it so well. It, like, the pitfalls, the upsets,
Thank you.
the highs, the lows, all of it. And it's really good, Anne. Like, it's really good, and I'm looking
Oh,
forward to people reading this. You start off at the beginning, which I think is like was such a it's such a powerful talk about real magic and real monsters. And I love that piece just right off the get-go at the beginning. What do you mean by that? Can you set the stage a little bit for what do you mean by the real magic and the real monsters?
see, you know, real magic is not, I mean, magic exists. 1,000% it exists, but it doesn't exist in the way that people normally perceive it to be. It's not what you see in Hollywood. It's not, anything like that. It's very much on a more of the scientific basis, like we were just discussing in regards to, you know, as you think, so you become, and what you pull towards you. And so when you believe in positivity, and I'm not talking like, oh, well, I tried to believe it or whatever. This has to be on a soul level. You have to go within. You have to face yourself. And I'm going to take a moment here. I do this with every interview. I really do advocate for therapy, not per like not because anything is wrong per se with an individual, and therapy isn't just for the people that have something going on. I think that it's really important to get to know ourselves on every level that we can, because the number one most important relationship that you have is that with yourself, period.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you can do that, and when you can face yourself, and you can start to learn forgiveness and unconditional love, and you then can take that out into the world, that's magic right there, number one. And then you start to, to focus on these other things. What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to, what's this purpose, or what could my purpose be? How could I help our community heal? And then, it's so interwoven. And so then all of a sudden you see things start to happen, like my necklace. That was definitely magical. And then as for monsters, I mean, the monsters are our shadow selves that are left I don't want to say tamed, but because it's not really that. It's we
Unexamined.
need to yes, unexamined. That's perfect. Because if we can face our shadows and learn the lessons that they have, and they have some of the most beautiful lessons, although very hard, um, when we allow that to take over, and when we don't decide to just choose, love, then the monster definitely takes over. And I mean, imagine if this magic, is real, right? And you can project anything out into this world, then that means anything. The positive and definitely the negative. And you don't want to be involved in the sphere of sending out negative energy and having all this bad luck, or, whatever you want to label it. And, I have to wonder that some of these things within our field, such as, and gosh, and this is not a blanket statement, this is an aspect, this is a possibility, because I want to examine everything, bring Sasquatch into the mix here. Yes, I think that it could be something that's flesh and blood, but I also think that there could be something else that exists that's malleable, that can maybe shapeshift. And maybe this thing, if we encounter it in the forest and it's a scary experience, is it tapping within us? Because I believe in epigenetics, so that's where things are passed down from our ancestors. So we have this ancestral memory of maybe a monster in the woods, or, whatever it is. But we also have the memories of when we were connected to the land. How long has it been since we've been, I mean, even the people listening right now, when's the last time that you walked in the woods barefoot? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
seriously. And so then when this thing, monster, whatever you want to call it, comes to you and it scares you, I think that it could be something manifesting that's really teaching you, this is an archetype, and it's teaching you to, face the shadow within, but also to reground yourself and to connect with your ancestral heritage. And, so the monsters come in many forms, but I think that they are all projected from, like you said, the unexamined shadow self.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think parapsychology agrees with you too. I think it's been shown on just multiple levels. I think of research by people like Scott Rogo, with Dr. William Roll, all these people who really even myself and my business partner and best friend Stephanie Wirtz, when we first got into this, that was the one thing that we really advocated for right at the beginning, which was this stuff really does come back to us. And we see that on repeat again and again throughout these cases where we begin to look at where people are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and what they are receiving in their environment. And right. They are related 100% of the time. You brought up Sasquatch, which I think is such a great example. And I mean, we got a lot of Bigfoot here, and we've got a lot of Dogman here. We've got, I mean, Alberta's we got friggin' everything here. And it's ridiculous. And what's been so interesting in my exploration of cryptozoology, and I've talked about my encounters on the show many times, but is that the encounters that I've had when I bring my own piece to the space with whatever I'm encountering at that moment will dictate the encounter. And 100%. And, when we think about things like these beings, which I think at the end of the day, I mean, all of us are energetic beings, whether it's, our cats and dogs, Sasquatch, Dogman. I think it's a continuum. I think some are kind of more, have maybe more of a foot in non-physical than we do.
Right.
I can definitely vouch for that with my Dogman encounters. They definitely have one foot in non-physical, a lot more than we do. But it absolutely dictates. So the people that are, sitting there thinking, what the hell does this conversation have to do with mediumship? Everything. Because if you don't get that inner core that you're talking about right, this is not going to go well. You're going to get it back exactly like what you were saying. You are going to get back a mirror of whatever you've got going on. That's what's going to happen.
Exactly. And this was a lesson that my dad really tried to hammer in from, my earliest memories. And even the cadence, I remember it all the time. Just don't go to fear, Anne. Don't go to fear. And and it's this mantra, and you have to really, and for the longest time I thought, well, how are you not supposed to go to fear? It's scary. It's this, it's that, And, but then I realized that what you do instead is you go to curiosity.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. That's been a huge game changer is to go to curiosity. And, and it does. I think that it affects our experiences with whether it's a cryptid, whether it's a ghostly apparition, or a person that you meet in the grocery store.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? And the fact that those people can change depending on what we're projecting. And usually that sends people for a bit of a loop because they think, well, no, that person's doing their own thing. Yeah, but our version of that person is coming from us. So how right? Like it's so crazy. And I think that's what people really need to grasp out of the idea of mediumship, is that the experience that you're having, even as a medium, is still coming from your own projection. And you might have multiple people experiencing different things, and they're all experiencing their own version of that. But it all comes back to, it really comes back to the living. Now, you talked about your dad, and in the book you talk about your grandparents that were involved in like antiques and collectibles, and I mean, you've had such a really interesting, crazy childhood, which I love because I did too.
Aww.
And you were surrounded by a lot of history. How did all of that shape your sensitivity and your sense of the unseen?
I feel so lucky that I got to grow up the way that I did, especially in the antique stores. And that was something that, and I think that I wrote about this in the book, where there was one particular antique store that I went into. Each section was decorated like it was from a different time. So you had something that was like from the 1950s, something that was like the 1800s, and it was like I was, time traveling all within this one space, and it was just incredible. And There's a lot of different postcards as well. I mean, gosh, you can learn so much from postcards. You can learn about towns that don't exist anymore because of the cancellations on the back, when they would stamp it and send
Absolutely.
it. You you can learn about Krampus. I knew about Krampus from when I was really little because my dad had a whole section of Krampus cards. And then, there was the exaggeration photos, but there was also in the spiritualist movement, the of course I can't remember what they were called, but they were the spirit photos where they would have somebody sitting there and then they'd have like a ghostly apparition behind them,
Yes.
and the tintypes and stuff. And that was, so being really young and growing up and all, I was exposed to all of that. And my grandpa, he loved to watch different things on the History Channel, Discovery Channel, and that included everything. And there was a rumor in the family that we might be related to Harry Houdini. I'm still doing the ancestry on that.
Okay, that's cool as
And,
hell. Just saying.
right. And so I was fascinated with him, his magic tricks and everything that he would do. And there was actually a magic shop in Seattle that my dad would take me to when we'd go to the postcard shows. And I remember getting like the invisible ink and just, different cards and stuff like that. I loved it. And so, I had the exposure. And I remember watching, and I know that I wrote about this in there. I watched about how his wife, after he passed, had tried to contact him from beyond. And I remember asking my grandpa, I can't remember how old I was now, but I ran downstairs and I said, Grandpa, when you die, will you come back and say hi to me? It was just such like, and he just looks at me and he goes, yeah, and so then he went into the first ghost story from my family that I had ever heard. And this was that, his mom had passed and we had went up there to stay for the funeral. And that night he was sleeping in the bed and he was woke up and he could see at the foot of his bed this opaque, like opalescent shape that seemed to be his mom. And he felt this feeling of peace wash over him that he had never had before. And then it just disappeared, and he felt that he knew that she had come to say goodbye, and he had tears in his eyes when he told me that. And my family wasn't one where nobody lied. That wasn't a thing, and it was genuine. I really believed it. So I had the seeds of belief. I had the support from a young age, but as beautiful as that is, as important as that is, there's another side to that I learned recently. And that is how much our brains want to fill in the gaps. It is desperate to grab the puzzle pieces so it can understand. So there was an experience that I had when I was about 6. I never wrote about this. And I'm only just trying to talk about it now. And that's, I was laying in my bed and there was this man in my room. And he went from he crawled from one side of my bed to the other.
Ooh.
And then I thought that he was going to be crawling back to the other side of the bed. And when I was expecting him on the opposite side, he actually came up behind me and touched my lower back. Now, that feeling stayed with me all throughout my life. And I never really understood that. So then I went in to do like a regression with a hypnotist. And when I did that, I thought that I had saw something standing at the foot of my bed that looked kind of reptilian with a hat, kind of like the Hat Man, but a reptilian alien looking thing.
Weird.
But I had done EMDR, which is eye movement reprocessing desensitization through therapy, and to really try to work through a lot of my CPTSD and anxiety and things. While I was doing that, the universe came in, and there was a male who spoke to me, who told me what had actually happened. So what had happened is that at 6 years old, my brain decided that I was having an alien encounter instead of an actual abusive moment with somebody I knew.
Wow.
So it was an actual human trauma that I experienced, not something supernatural. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the way it is for everybody, but it's very important to understand how the mind works and that is a component that can happen when you already carry those seeds of belief.
I think that is such an important story because I feel like when we delve into the area of mediumship, mental health becomes a
Yeah.
major thing.
Yes.
And I've run into so many people over the years who have used like paranormal events or parapsychology or whatever to mask an actual
Yes.
problem. And they always get very offended when you say, well, could it be something else? But it's not a slight, like what you were saying. It's not a
Right.
slight. It's about not being anti-paranormal. It's about being pro-reality, and
Yes.
and being able to look at well, going back to the shadow work that you were talking about,
Hmm.
going back to that so that you can be clear for you
Right.
as to what exactly you're experiencing, so you're not going to bed in doubt or in fear. And now you've given yourself the gift to be able to process that and enhance the abilities that you have even further.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's so important. And oh, connection issues. Sorry about that.
It's okay on my end.
Okay. So, yeah, so it's one of those things where what I've noticed within the field, like you said, it's not being against anything. It's being, pro, reality and stuff. But when we have, so the way that I view it is you have a puzzle, I have a puzzle, and some other people have a puzzle. However, all of our puzzles, even though they're ours and we've put the pieces together, etc., there's a bigger puzzle. And if we all bring our pieces together, we're going to see this glorious, big, beautiful picture. The problem is a lot of people don't want to bring their puzzle to the party, you know,
Yeah.
and
Ooh, I
and it's
like that analogy. That's really good.
but it's understandable though too because it's scary, and if you're not ready to face yourself, then they don't want to do that because that means that they have to examine that. One of the big things too that falls in line with this that I recently learned about was night myopia. And this is where at nighttime humans become nearsighted because we can't adjust to the lighting very well. So here again, our brain wanting to put those puzzle pieces together, right? And then the seeds of belief. Let's say you're out in the woods and you're looking for our darling Sasquatch again. And so you're sitting there, and then your eyes are adjusting, and all of a sudden there's this shadow, and you're like, oh my gosh, what is that? And you're focusing, but you're also on edge because now you're out in the wilderness somewhere that maybe that you're not used to being. So you perceive that you see a shadow silhouette in the shape of a Sasquatch, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, really. And then maybe it goes away, but it comes back in another area. So this experience that you're having could be, not necessarily is, but could be night myopia. And it's not that you've necessarily seen a Sasquatch and that it's teleporting, but something with your physiology. Now, when you present that idea, people can get very offended, and it kind of breaks the reality a little bit because it's not just about belief system. Now they're worried that their body has betrayed them.
Right.
So it's very difficult. It's very heavy.
How do you find, like, if you're talking to somebody who was maybe unsure of what they were like, what they were seeing. Is this an experience? Is this not an experience? For you, how do you differentiate between that? Like if you're, it's like, let's say the Sasquatch experience, if you're out there and you're going, man, I don't know if I'm seeing this or whether it's just my brain playing tricks on me. What are some ways that people can check in with themselves, that they can go, wait a minute, maybe there is something going on versus, maybe something's a little jacked up?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, when you begin to have a experience, a perceived experience, check in with yourself with your breathing. Definitely that's number one, because the second our cortisol starts to spike, all kinds of things can happen. And so just, you can close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths in, and then maybe focus on something else for a second as well. What can you see? What can you feel? What can you smell? And then continue, but definitely try to regulate yourself a little bit first. But I also understand how hard that is to do, because with my experience, I was out with other people and I saw what looked like the silhouette. But we weren't out there for that. We were doing like ghost hunting and stuff. So then I was kind of laughing at myself. So number one, I didn't have my glasses on. Number two, it was getting dark. Number three, I'm just gonna admit it, I'm a weenie. I get scared.
You just set yourself up for failure, Annie.
It's okay. It's okay. It's one of those things where it's like I value the truth of the situation, and so that's where I was at. And I thought, gosh, so then I tried to I grabbed a flashlight and I looked over. I didn't see anything. And I tried to tell myself, you're just being a scaredy cat. But then we heard this really loud, open-handed slap on the side of the vehicle that we drove in on. And I hadn't told anybody what I saw. And somebody else thought that they saw a silhouette. And they looked over at me and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I tried to shake my head yes, but then I shook it no. And I was like, we've got to go.
Freudian slip. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were like, all right, well, let's get back in the little, like ATV thing that they had. So we get in there and we drive out of the woods and we're now in the field. And they're like, okay, is that better for you? And I was like, And we're sitting there, and my friend decides that it would be the greatest idea in the whole wide world to hold up her phone. And I knew what was coming. And it was the Ohio Howl recording. And
Boy.
my blood ran so cold. Oh my gosh. And wouldn't you know it, though, here's the thing. She plays this. And sure enough, with the same cadence, the same sound, that came out of the woods. So extremely loud. And after the howl, you can hear this large tree being ripped up out of the ground, mashed against another tree. And at that point, I'm yelling at them to drive.
Yep, time to go. Yeah.
I am done. And,
wow.
And it was terrifying. So, so I mean, it's one of those things where it's like that's a lot all in one, and it obviously wasn't the night myopia, because other
that's
people
a little bit
were
past
there.
The night myopia. I think at that point when it's screaming at you that
right. yeah, exactly. So I mean, you take your experiences and you re-examine them under different lenses, I think. There's a great quote. Of course, I can't remember it, but it was something about learning in hindsight. So we have our experience, and then we re-examine it, and we can learn a lot more from it. And yeah, I mean,
that's amazing. It's amazing, and like I've heard those howls out there. It's unmistakable.
Yeah.
Like it's unmistakable. In the book, you, speaking of crazy, terrifying things, you recount a crazy experience when you were babysitting at a duplex where you were hearing these thuds and footsteps. I am really curious if you could tell everybody that story. And looking back now through those lenses, what you think was actually going on in that house.
So this is also something that's really interesting. I was a teenager and I had went to my friend's house. She lived in a duplex. She was on the left side, and then her neighbor was on the right, and her neighbor had two young kids. So they wanted to go out on this date night, and we said, hey, yeah, we'll babysit for you. So we go over, and the little girl was sleeping on the couch, and her little brother was upstairs. We had to keep them separated because, of course, they would like try to stay up all night playing. We had read the little girl's stories, and she was passed out on the couch. And we had checked on the little boy, and he was asleep. So my friend Brittany and I were just hanging out. And then all of a sudden, it literally sounded like somebody fell into the house. Like if you were to open the window and fall inside the window. But this is a second story window with like zero access. There's no way that you could have gotten in there. So of course, I was terrified because it was so loud, but
Sure.
immediately I was trying to be like, well, maybe he fell out of the bed or something. Maybe he was pretending to be asleep because honestly, I used to do that to my dad. I always would pretend I was asleep. And so I went upstairs and I tried to sneak, real quiet like on the stairs so he wouldn't catch me. And so I could try to catch him, but he was still asleep in the bed. So then I thought, okay, well, that's weird. And so then I sat halfway down the stairs and didn't hear anything. So I went back downstairs and I told Brittany, I was like, yeah, I don't know. Well, we heard it again. But this was like more thuds. And so I went back up there and again, there was no sound going from the hallway into the room where he was sleeping. It just didn't make any sense. So of course, I'm coming down the stairs and I'm feeling spooked. And right when I get to the bottom of the stairs, the front door opens and it scared me so bad. I jumped and it was just the parents coming home. And
Jeez.
so I was just ready. I was so done. So we leave. We go over to her side, my friend's side of the duplex. And I told her mom what had happened. And she says, let me tell you, that has been happening between, this time, after this certain time of night, every night for the last couple nights. And I said, really? So you've heard it before? And she described the thuds and stuff like that. And I said, okay. And I asked Brittany, I said, can you stay up with me and us listen to this with your mom? And she wasn't interested, so she went to bed. So I'm sitting on the couch with her mom, and all of a sudden, it sounded like somebody took a four-poster, like, think medieval times, okay? Like the
Yep.
four-poster beds made out of oak or something, and you pick it up and you slam it down on the floor. So which would be the ceiling right above us. The chills, just that ran through my body. I've never heard anything so loud, and it just shook you to the core, and it just kept happening, these bangs, and it was just like something out of a horror movie. And
Sure.
when you went upstairs though, it was silent. So the same thing that was happening on the other side, but over here it was much, much louder. And I went back downstairs and I was like, what is it and everything. And she actually had a history of being involved with a group of people who were into like seances and spirituality and all that kind of thing. But they were very religious as well. And she had told me stories about that group. Well, she felt like she knew that it was something demonic or tied to Satan. That was her interpretation of it. But she sat there and was like, she did a prayer, and said, in Jesus' name, and then all of a sudden it stopped. But what was so weird is when it stopped, there was like it was so quiet that it was loud. And
Hmm.
I don't know how to describe that, but then there was like this ringing in the ears and just this stillness, and it never happened again after that. Um, Now this is one of the big things about my book is that most every single experience in there, I have somebody with me. And that's primarily why I wrote the book, is because there was so much that happened to me throughout my life, but I was with somebody else. So the experience that I had when I was alone, and come to find out that that was trauma and my brain trying to protect me, that makes sense when it comes to singular events like that. But to try to examine experiences where you have other witnesses is definitely a lot harder, although in psychology there is still like the hive mind, and people being able to witness or experience the same things. But I really haven't gotten too far into that quite yet. um but I chalk it up to a genuine experience of something, because it was just because that's the thing. I understand pipes. Like I understand like the gas heated homes, and the water and the pounding, and all these different things, or houses settling and stuff like that. This was violent. This was horribly, loudly violent. And I've never experienced anything like it before nor after ever again. And I don't think that that could have been that's a without, not within situation for sure.
That's wild. And so many places I think that have these incredible phenomenon going on, and that so many people with mediumship abilities or feel like they have that ability, like they want to be able to go into some of these places and experience this, crazy stuff and whatever. And I think that's where everything that we've been talking about really comes back to play. And I think even the fact that you're talking about having other witnesses being able to validate
Right.
what you're experiencing and saying. And I don't want to gloss over that, because I think when we're talking about that difference between mental health versus like actual phenomenon going on, I think having that validation around you is important.
Yeah.
Because I remember that, and this case always I found very interesting. It was actually on Dr. Phil a number of years ago when he was still on, and he had a lady on who was absolutely 100% convinced that she was being stalked by this ghost, and all of the signs and symptoms that she was experiencing were absolutely like textbook schizophrenia.
Hmm.
And the stuff that was in like that she was talking about, everything from, I think the spirit is talking to me from the ceiling fan.
Hmm.
She believed it was a little boy. But she was absolutely 100% convinced. And he handled it brilliantly. And he just said, like, he said, if that's the case, then, and you believe that, then having that, therapy or evaluation done shouldn't bother you. Because
Right.
if if you are convinced that that's what it is, examining that belief should be completely on the table for you to do. And I think somewhere in her being she knew it wasn't right, because she's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not examining that. And he's like, well, then your belief in it can't be very strong,
Right.
because if you believe this, then we should be able to take it apart and examine it, and you should be willing to do that. And I think that's one of the things that you do really well in the book, is you are willing to take these things apart and examine them. And I think that's one thing that I really want all the listeners who are, wanting to you get into exploring their own abilities with mediumship and things like that. I think that level of critical thinking and being able to explore it and maybe come up with the answer of, oh no, that wasn't something that was in regards to mediumship, that's a part of this.
Yes. Yes, it is. And I think that that's really important. In the beginning, it was a little scary. I mean, of course it is when our beliefs are questioned or shift or whatever. But when you are able to do that it's there's no failure. It's just lessons, you know? And
Absolutely.
so you're this eternal student, and I am so excited to learn and to continue to learn. And if that means that I learn that something that I experienced was actually something that's scientific and normal, then great, because I can put that in the pool, the puzzle pieces to be like, oh, here's another thing that it could be. Because if we know all the normal things that something can be, and it doesn't fit in all those normal packages, then oh my gosh, we've got this shiny something, you know? So it's
Oh,
exciting.
absolutely. It totally is exciting. I'll tell you a funny little story before I let you brag about your book because you have to. The Stephanie and I, when we were kids, we, I mean, we had very little social life. Our entire existence was bent around this stuff, and we didn't go to school dances. We didn't go to like none of that, and we spent every weekend and most of our evenings together trying to work through different problems in parapsychology, trying to figure things out. And I remember distinctly the one evening we had been at a very haunted location here in Edmonton, which is relatively famous. It's the Firkins House here in Edmonton. And the one lady that we were with had a weird thing go on with her camera. There was this really strange light that would sort of come into the camera, and it was square. It was
Oh,
tiny, it was square, and it would cause the camera to focus and come out of focus and focus and come out of focus. And she was one of these people that was like, every bloody thing is paranormal. Like everything that you like, to the point where Stephanie and I started to use her name as a bit of a joke. We would like,
oh,
it was like, oh, if it's this, then it's a,
right.
and so we would, so we it would just got so bad because you just saw paranormal things and literally everyday things. And so anyway, we spent an entire night, we pulled an all-nighter with this camera in her hallway of her condo trying to replicate this thing because
Wow.
we knew, we're like, there are no square lines in nature. This is something mechanical. We have to figure out what this is, or she is never going to let this shit go. So that's what we did. We spent all that and we got it. We figured it out. And it was this
Nice.
weird aspect of the camera that would throw out like a focus light, and this
Oh,
focus light was square, and
right.
for some reason under the right conditions it would actually project into the lens, and you could see this little square, what looked like kind of like a like orbish thing,
Hmm.
float through the screen, and that was distorting the camera. But it was one of those I mean, we had so much fun debunking
That's
this,
awesome.
and it's one of my best memories of her when she was alive is that us sitting in this stupid hallway at like 3 a.m
Oh.
trying to figure this out. So it's like you say, that part is part of the journey, and to have that critical thinking. So I am going to let you talk about this book because it is so
Oh.
well written, and I want people to be able to get it. So tell people where they can get it. What is it? And yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. So the book title used to be Aperture in the Veil: Born in a Preternatural World. It's going through a republication, and it's got a whole new facelift, a new, cover and everything. And the new title is Haunted Inheritance: A Memoir of Spirits, Signs, and Second Sight. And it really is just, I mean, it's all about my life from my earliest memories up until around, I think it was about 2022 or 3. And I wrote it because, I have children and we don't know. We're not promised tomorrow. And I wanted to leave them something that if they ever had experiences or anything like that, that they knew that they weren't alone and that these things are out there, they are real. And then it just became so much bigger than that. And it was, I knew that this had to be published for, the whole, for all of us. Right now, it's going to be on Amazon. So the best way to know when that's going to come out and everything is just to follow me on social media. You can find me at Ann Selene on Facebook. On Instagram, it's Antomology. And then I do have a website as well, annceline.com.
That's awesome, and we'll have that in the show notes so that people can follow you and get the book when it comes out, because it's so good. And I think for anybody who's looking to connect with something bigger this holiday season, and to do that introspection and to just remind yourself that there's magic out there, that Christmas there is magic, and it's all year. Like it's
Yes.
all year, but we tend to think and are a little bit maybe more open to it at this time of year. So I'm really hoping that people are going to plug into this and start doing their own work, because I know there's so many of our listeners.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Oh, it's true. Like, and there's so many of our listeners that do the work. Like they're on board with this show because they care about that and they care about doing the work. And I'm just really glad that you were able to come on and share all this with us. And it's just been awesome.
Oh, well, it's been such an honor. Thank you so much.
As always, such an amazing conversation. Anne is one of those people that you could talk to forever. And I love to get into this stuff in a way that maybe people don't think about as often. So I'm hoping that this holiday season, you guys can take something away from this as well. And that if you're missing somebody, or you want to reach out in a brand new way, maybe set up a spirit plate at your table. If anybody hasn't heard of that, good colleague of mine, good friend, Christopher Brewer, who many of you will remember from Paranormal 911, he actually sets out a plate of food for anybody, any spirit that would like to come and join him at his Christmas table. And I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful tradition. Of course, he's First Nations, Indigenous, and they carry that tradition in many scenarios, many areas of celebration. So another thing that you guys can do is just think about it in a different way. You know, it's so hard for people, so many people at this time of year that are missing somebody, and we tend to think that they're not with us, that we're just having to remember them. But I would encourage everybody to actually include them and invite them to sit at the table, invite them to sit under the tree, invite them to the party. You know, you never know exactly who's going to be there and what's going to happen. But I would really encourage everyone to view this holiday as a time to bridge that gap between this world and the world of non-physical. And Anne's book is a really great way for people to do that. If you're on your own journey of mediumship and trying to understand this and are looking for that connection to somebody who maybe has been on that journey as well, Anne's book really is a great place to start, because she's got some incredible stories in there, and you get to know not only her as a person, but about, I think, a lot of experiences that people who are maybe struggling a bit with their gifts, maybe don't have the support that many do, and it allows you to at least reach out and know that there's somebody else out there who's experienced something similar to you. So whether you're a medium or not, this is the book for you guys. So Haunted Inheritance, a memoir of spirits, signs, and second sight by Lady Ann Selene. I can't recommend it enough. I hope you guys are able to get out there and pre-order. It's a really, really cool book. So anyway, thank you for joining me on this eerie and magical expedition, my dear listeners. And remember, there is no line between the natural and supernatural, especially at Christmas. All is consciousness. Until next time, stay curious, friends. Supernatural Circumstances is a co-production of Entity Seeker, Paranormal Research and Teachings, and the 20th Plane. This podcast is a part of the Curious Cast podcast network. You can find out more about me, Morgan Knudsen, and book me for live appearances at entityseeker.ca. You can also email the show at supernaturalcircumstances.com.